including criteria when businesses can apply, which sectors are eligible, when repayment will be required, and how much forgiveness will be offered. And B, fix a large employer emergency financing facility by reducing restrictions and amending the interest rate schedule. And C, reporter la hausse.
C, postpone the increase of the Canada Pension Plan payroll taxes planned for January 1st, 2021. And D, postpone the increase of the carbon tax and the alcohol escalator tax planned for 2021.
The honourable member for Carleton.
Well, I really feel like something's going on here. Maybe because the Conservatives are going to have the 3-week break in the House of Commons while everyone is. It seems like there's hard hitting. A lot of cylinders are firing this way, that way. And here we have Pierre Poilievre. Check this out. It's great.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. I rise today to propose that we move from the credit card economy to the paycheck economy. And let me tell you what I mean by that, by illustrating the difference in approach from the government versus ourselves here in the Conservative opposition. Last week, the Finance Minister made an interesting observation. She said, I want to thank you, first of all, for really zeroing in on the preloaded stimulus idea, she told BNN. This idea is the following. Households do have quite a lot of money that they've saved because there hasn't been much to do in the pandemic. And certainly, it would be great if that money could go to driving our recovery. If people have ideas on how the government can act to unlock that preloaded stimulus, I am very, very interested. So, ladies and gentlemen, if you have money in your bank account, lock it away. You might even want to put it under your bed before this government finds out that it's there. They think you're saving too much, and they want to empty your bank account as the best way, they think, to get the economy started. Now, some will say that's not what she didn't mean what she said. What she was trying to say was that we need more consumer spending in this miserable economy. And certainly that debt-induced spending would create activity, but never confuse activity with achievement. CIBC has reported that a very large share of the government's COVID emergency spending has been leaking right out of Canada altogether, because the debt-funded money that consumers are spending is actually going to imported goods. All of those Amazon and Alibaba deliveries, that's products imported from abroad, and when those products come in, our money goes out. In fact, that is how our economy has been functioning for the last 5 years. 5 years in a row, 5 trade deficits. Here's what a trade deficit is. We buy more than we sell, and we borrow to make up the difference. We buy from the world and borrow from the world. They get the money, investment, and jobs. We're left with the debt. And day by day, we become more and more reliant on the People's Republic of China and other economic powerhouses that send us their goods so that we can send them our money. More and more, our population becomes enslaved to debt. Our debt to GDP ratio is now 384% when you combine households, businesses, and governments. This is a record-smashing level of debt. It's the second highest in the G7, behind only Japan. It means that for every 1 percentage point increase in the effective interest rate, we will have a 3.84% increase in the economic cost of our debt on the world stage. And you will hear more of this from the member for Mégantic-L'Érable, with whom I'm splitting my time, Madam Speaker. He too is concerned about the fact that money is the best servant, but the worst master. If you invest your money, it serves you. If you're borrowing money, it masters over you, and that is what is happening with Canadians today. This high level of debt to fund short-term consumption has only made us weaker and more vulnerable to the rest of the world. We don't need to come back out of this pandemic lockdown with even more debt. In fact, we need precisely the opposite. We need Canadians to save, earn, and invest. Save to prepare for the future and a secure retirement. Invest. Much of those savings are converted either by being lent out by banks to small businesses or converted into TFSAs and RRSPs into equities and other investments that build factories, dig mines, develop intellectual property and patented technologies. Those assets then produce ongoing income to power our economy into the future. So instead of debt-fueled consumption, we have investment-fueled production. We're seeing none of that right now. The Bank of Canada, which is pumping $400 billion of printed money into our economy, inflating assets for rich people while devaluing the wages of the working class, has reported that over the next 3 years, investment will only grow by 0.8%. In fact, it won't be until at least 2023 that we get investment levels back to where they were in 2019. Meanwhile, consumption will grow by 4.7%, 6 times faster than investment. 80% of the growth over the next 2 years will come in the form of debt-fueled government spending and consumer spending. Again, more debt, more vulnerability. How do we make the switch then from this credit card economy to a paycheck economy? We do it by unleashing the mighty force of our 20 million Canadian workers. Let's end the war on work, by which I refer to a tax and benefit system that claws back and takes away as much as 80 cents on the dollar of some people when they go out into the workforce and earn another 100 cents. So for example, if you're a single parent, you go and get a job and you earn an extra dollar from $55,000 to $55,001, you lose as much as 80 cents of that dollar to clawbacks and taxes. These penalties exist right across the income level, and they ding the lowest income people the hardest. Some people with disabilities lose more than $1 of income for every dollar increase they have in wages. That is the war on work, punishing people for making an effort. Let's reform our tax and benefit system so it always pays more to work. Let's reverse the insane system we have right now, which means that it takes 168 days longer to get a building permit for construction in Canada than in the United States. We are 34th out of 35 OECD nations in the delay to build a factory, a plant, a mine, a shopping center. We should be number one. This should be the fastest and simplest place to get a building permit and to build a structure and fill it with good paid workers. Let's knock down interprovincial trade barriers so Canadians can actually buy and sell from one another instead of just importing cheap products from abroad. Let's speed up the recognition of the incredible skills and qualifications of immigrants who come here with knowledge in the trades and professions so they can earn the full salary for which they are qualified, rather than being forced into a low-wage job because regulators ban them from getting a permit to work. Let's open up our free enterprise system by removing red tape and shortening the amount of time our small businesses must spend filling out tax forms, so that resource can be dedicated to serving customers and hiring workers. Let's repeal C-68 and C-69 and C-48 so that we can unleash the force of our energy and resource sectors to bring tens of billions of dollars back into this country. We have a $14 billion LNG project waiting approval in Quebec. We have a $20 billion oil sands project sitting around waiting in northern Alberta. We have pipelines, we have rail lines, we have transmission lines that are ready to go as soon as the government gets out of the way. So let's get the government out of the way, open up our economy, transform ourselves from a credit card economy into a paycheck economy so that our 20 million brilliant and strong Canadian workers can stand on their feet and build our economy. Thank you.
Questions and comments? The honourable member for the honourable parliamentary secretary. No, the honourable member for Pickering.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and I'm glad to be able to have a chance to ask the honourable member a question. He speaks about paycheck economy and not a credit card economy, but I'm really curious, and in an earlier speech he talked about the war on work, but I'm really curious to see how the member opposite is going to contort himself and twist himself into knots when I ask the question about when he was a member of government, they had the lowest unemployment rate since the Great Depression. And what did they have to show for it? $150 billion in debt. And you know what they didn't have? A global pandemic that shot down economies everywhere. So, Madam Speaker, what exactly does this member propose when they added that much debt and had such a terrible unemployment record?
A member for Carleton.
I think the member accidentally told the truth when she said we had the lowest unemployment since the Great Depression. She was right that we did have the lowest unemployment in the G7. We had the best record going through the Great Global Recession, which is interesting because now we have the second worst, the second highest unemployment in the G7. Only socialist Italy is higher, and the Italian socialist policies are the ones that this government is working hardest to emulate. Even France, which used to be socialist and is reversing those policies, has now lowered its unemployment below Canada's. And here in Canada, we see a government shutting down our economy, trying to nationalize economic activity, getting exactly the same kinds of predictable results that those policies always produce. That member should look at the magnificent success and the world-famous actions of the previous Conservative government to get us through that recession. This government could learn a lot from that.
Questions et commentaires.
Questions and comments?
L'honorable député de Rose.
The honourable member for Rosemont-la-Petite-Patrie. Thank you, Madam Speaker. It's a pleasure for me to ask my colleague from Carleton a question. It's been a long time since we've debated together. Will he not admit that in this pandemic there are people getting richer and it's indecent? The president of Amazon gave a big bonus to all of his employees, and they're as rich, if not richer, than they were before the pandemic. And how much tax does Amazon pay Canada? Zero. How is it possible that people are making billions in profits and they're not contributing to our social programs like all other Canadian companies, including small and medium-sized ones, are doing? Now, member for Carleton. I'd like to thank my colleague for his question. I think it's outrageous. I think that's one of the reasons why we need to stop sending our money outside Canada. That's the credit card economy, where people buy things from abroad. It leaves us in debt, and it gives the wealth to others. And I'd like to underscore the fact that central banks are printing money right now, and that's causing inflation. It is enriching the ultra-rich.